Are officially live. So, welcome to all those who are viewing, either currently or late. We apologize for any delays, and hopefully, you guys can see us streaming clear, crystal clear, and loud enough to hear.
Oh man.
So there are a few topics that we want to touch on, but first, Hank, before we actually get into this first topic, just let who's listening or watching, what's on your mind right now.
Man, that's a very interesting question, Leland. For those who don't know, my name is Hank. I'm the old dog, so to speak, for what it is that we're trying to do, and I have a different perspective on a lot of issues that are going on today, basically only because of my background. It doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but
you
really,
don't have all the answers.
Leland, I think too often people are waiting for they're waiting for a miracle. They're waiting for someone else to solve or resolve their issue without any effort from them. And that really blows my mind. Or people are following folk who wouldn't follow themselves if their lives depended on it.
Oh, wow.
And that people they have blinders on in some instances, or they've got earmuffs on, and I don't know what their true values are.
Okay. All right. You mentioned a lot there. So,
well,
are we talking about? Okay.
I get philosophical sometimes.
So, are we talking about leaders? Are we talking about leadership, or are we talking about something different?
Actually, it's the sum total. It's leaders. It's leadership.
Okay.
It's doing something when in your heart of hearts you know that that's not what you should be doing, or following somebody that you know you shouldn't be following, or waiting for something that's never going to happen.
Wow.
And then point the fingers at someone else because of the dilemma that you're in.
Oh, it sounds like you're speaking a little bit more tongue-in-cheek about some of the innuendos, or I guess you can call them dog whistling when it comes to evictions and foreclosures.
But I think it's gone beyond dog whistling, okay? Because the first one we're talking about because I think we can roll them all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the spread of the virus.
Okay.
Now, I grew up in the country years ago where we did not have access to health care. So once every 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, a community health nurse came through the neighborhood and did wellness checks.
Okay.
My mom and dad could not afford to take us to the doctor because out in the hinterlands of Virginia, there were no doctors. You had to go into town. We lived 20 miles or so from town. Okay. Just to go to the doctor or the dentist, or, forget if you couldn't see. The small towns may not have a dentist or an optometrist. They may have a doctor who came into town once every couple of weeks, but the towns couldn't afford a doctor.
Right.
So to me, healthcare is essential. And as a result of that, here's what I tell people. If you're sitting still and you feel nothing and you hear nothing from your body, you're probably doing okay.
Wow. Okay.
But if you're sitting there with aches and pains and palpitations or what have you, you should go get yourself checked out.
Okay.
Okay. It's like if you go out and you're exercising and you are perspiring and you're panting and all this other stuff. And you said, okay, I need to back it off a little bit. I need to rest. But if you sit down and rest for 10 or 15 minutes and you're still having those symptoms, would you agree that possibly something is wrong?
100%.
Okay. So I'm saying, in my mind, we all have these sensories or these senses that says something's out of whack. What you're going to do about it? Now, that's the I think human nature. Now we're looking at the virus. I was paranoid because I had pre-existing conditions. I double mask. I was so paranoid, I would wear a mask in the house. My house with my family members, we wore masks because our little bubble was not just our little bubble. My son worked someplace, that was a bubble, but everybody in his bubble had their own little micro bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't be too careful. So when access to medicine was available, I was eager to get there because I would rather have a 50% chance of life than a 0% chance of life. Okay?
A chance.
So I understand that, there are people out there who've got some conditions that, X, Y, Z. But my question is, what does your gut tell you? What does your what does your gut tell you about whether or not you should do X, Y, or Z? And if you say, I'm not going to do it because this is what I believe, then that's fine. But we live in bubbles, and our bubbles affect everybody that comes in contact with us. So this Delta virus, the smart people are saying that it is right now, that it is the most aggressive and the deadliest form of the virus because the virus continues to mutate. Okay. And people are saying, well, I'm going to be fine because so-and-so said I was going to be fine. So the question is, what does so-and-so do when you don't see so-and-so? What has so-and-so done? Has so-and-so gotten vaccinated but didn't tell anybody?
Right. Yeah.
Do you care about your family, your loved ones, your friends? Are you care enough about them to protect them? Okay. And if you do, then do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Now people say, well, what's the right thing? If you don't know, I'm now, again, that's one man's view. Okay. That's one man's view. So hey, people listening, don't take my advice. I would just say, follow your own spirit. But I pray that if you haven't gotten vaccinated, I pray that you don't get sick. I pray that you don't get it.
I do want to say this. I am not like an expert on disease or nothing like that. Okay. But I do know that viruses, germs tend to grow. They tend to evolve, matriculate, as some people may say. And what can happen is there can be different versions or variants of something.
Strains, right?
Strains, yeah, absolutely. So with that being the case, a person can wonder to themselves, someone who is cautious, they could say, at what point will this end? At what point will it end? Is it possible that for each region, something additional could be added to that strand, and that in itself makes it something totally different?
I'm sitting here. I'm here. You notice I'm scratching my head because for so long the the ether was saying that it's like the common cold, or it's like the flu. And the smart people were saying, hey, this is deadly, this is real. So when you consider that over 600,000 Americans have died, and I think everybody that's listening probably knows of somebody who has died as a result of the virus. The question is, who are you going to believe? You're going to believe the scientists or your lying eyes? Who are you going to believe? And that's the piece that gets me, because with people who are captive in New York City, who live in high-rise apartment buildings and they can't go anyplace, and they're at the mercy of the system, and they're trying their best every day to do the right thing so that they can survive, because they've seen so many friends and loved ones perish as a result of this virus. They know it's real. So if they know that it's real, what do you think goes through their mind when they see someone out in the street hobnobbing without a mask, or in the stores without a mask? You think they're paranoid?
They could be. And then there could be, and then I want to say this though, there could also be a contrarian, right? Well, someone who says, hey, you know what? I just saw my local senator at the grocery store, right? Hypothetically. And I happen to notice that for some odd reason, he or she did not have their mask on.
Can I try to give an analogy? I mean, it might not be an analogy, but another example of something that just popped into this little beady head of mine. You remember some years ago when the Flint water problem came about, and there were a lot of people saying, well, hey, that's not a problem, this, that, and the other.
It's still an issue. It's still an issue.
It's still an issue. But we had some officials, some government officials, and I don't know whether they were the federal level or the state level. They went to a meeting, okay, some type of forum. And generally speaking, you know, they would have bottled water. So someone opened a bottle of water and to drink, and someone at the table said, that's Flint tap water. Now, the person who was about to drink the water was saying, there's nothing wrong with the water. Okay? But when someone said, there's Flint tap water in that bottle, do you think that person drank that water?
No.
That's what, he didn't. And that's sort of kind of what gets me with the virus. Okay. Now, is it the idea that it depends on the messenger? Okay. Do you need a particular messenger to say, hey, it's all good or it's not good? You know, I don't know. So let me rewind and say, do what you want to do. It's your life. When I leave my house, I mask. In my car, there's hand sanitizer. And if I go in a crowd, I'm double masked. Paranoid, I'm alive. Okay?
Okay. Fair enough.
So we were talking about the spread. It's bad. It's on the rise, and there are people in the U.S., certain parts of the country, who don't want to take the vaccine, and then there are people in certain countries that would kill for a dose of the vaccine.
So many paradigms, so many perspectives.
Absolutely.
And I do want to say this. If someone doesn't have the vaccine, if someone does have the vaccine, that's not even, for me at least, that's not, I'm not saying yay or nay. What I will say is this. When we're looking at what's taking place in our own backyard, right, for the economy and everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that there is a variant. I hear that there is a mutation of something that, for the most part, I would say had a strong impact on the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my initial thought is, oh my goodness, will this be something that happens again, or is there something that can be done to make all this go away or subside? And so that's my initial thought that comes to my mind.
And again, I appreciate that, because to me, having an honest discussion about almost any topic is all well and good. But at some point in time, you're going to have to fish or cut bait, as my granddad used to say. But the question that I ask people who are on the fence is, which is worse, knowing and not doing, or doing and not knowing? That was just a question. I'm not going to give the answer.
Well, I think it's still it's philosophical. A person could say they rather know and at least know what they're up against. Another person might say, hey, if I'm gonna get hit by a truck, I don't want to see it coming.
Again, I understand.
Okay. So I would just say in that case, it's still going to depend on the person. What I love about the pandemic is that for most cases, it allows me to see more of a human instinct.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some people that, for whatever reason, they hope that it never ends.
Okay.
There are others that, due to the pandemic, it has brought them closer to family and friends. There are others, because of the pandemic, it has made them wealthier than before. Right?
Yeah.
I spoke with someone yesterday, and he told me that his business was doing 5 times better during the pandemic than ever before, and he was, as you can imagine, ecstatic. And so, the pandemic has made me realize just how selfish humans can be. I'm not saying that person's selfish. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that depending on how it's impacting one's sphere within their arm's length, that depends on what, their outlook on it. And if things have been going well for someone, la-di-da-di. But if things have been going bad for someone else, it's a totally different story. And so no one is on the same spectrum.
And you and I have talked about this before. I think there are good and bad things that the pandemic caused. I think the pandemic caused people to think more efficiently from a business perspective. And as a result of that, there's been innovation that has cropped up. Actually, if you think about what it is that we do, we're basically virtual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've been able to reach distances, audiences that we wouldn't have thought about engaging a year ago.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like every Friday in the marketing meeting, we're finding out that we have reach for some reason in countries overseas.
Isn't that crazy?
We have better traction in countries overseas than we do in the United States. And I want to say this, though, and this is a great example. If you ask me, just based on those things, it's like, man, you can work from anywhere. You can live from anywhere. You have your laptop, you have internet, you have cellular data, right? All these different things, hotspots, right? I could be anywhere. And so, of course, in that perspective, you're like, man, yeah, the pandemic has actually revealed a lot of great, like you said, initiatives or innovations. But I also want to say this. The idea for people to work remotely after, I would say, maybe the 2000s, it was a reality for most people. Like it was something that could be done, but people did not actually take that leap of faith until the pandemic.
Right. You're forced to.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with someone. Yeah. I spoke with a guy who's in investment banking, and he moved from during the pandemic. He chose to move from DC to Indianapolis, and he and his family once a month. They now live in Indianapolis. They have been traveling, within the continental U.S. once a month. He and his family, and that's because of COVID. And he's able to work, basically from a laptop or a phone, and it doesn't affect his performance or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, that could have been done before the pandemic, but because of I'm thinking it's either fear or employers not wanting to loosen, quote unquote, the reins. They just didn't allow people to do it. Now that they're seeing this more acceptable, more people are doing it. And
but I think it was herd mentality. It was partially herd mentality. They did what their competitors or colleagues did.
Yeah.
They built these big monstrosities, put lots of people in them, paid exorbitant amounts of money for either leasing or building or what have you. And when people were going home, having their own laptops, using all of their own utility stuff, hooked into a database, halfway across the world, and still be able to function. Like, why didn't we do this 15 years ago? Well, partially because technology wasn't there. I don't know when Zoom came along, or
and Zoom and Zoom is great, but we had Ring Central and a few other things that operated like Zoom before Zoom became popular, and people were still.
But you had to go again, because I was working for the government. We had video conferences, but they were expensive. And you had to go to a certain location. But now you just wherever you are, just so. So I applaud all of the innovations that have come along as a result of COVID, but I scratch my head when I consider the fact that there are individuals who are putting their lives and the lives of others at risk because they choose not to get vaccinated because someone told them that there's something wrong with the formula. That's the piece that gets me.
And I love these. I love the fact that you and I have so many different views and perspectives and experiences and all that good stuff. Because I can also see from someone else's perspective of what happens if 1 out of 1,000 get some type of horrible disease, or palsy or something like that. And then I can also see a person saying, wow, I would hate to have to live my life in that type of condition, just by a happenstance.
Well, and that's interesting, Leland, that you say that, because people in Cuba today are
Hiroshima, right?
Well, no, but in Cuba, the ability to protest has been reduced. And you can't embargoes. You can't go there. The internet is being cut off, so communications is limited. In Iran, you've got similar situation. You live in countries where you think you got freedom of speech until you say something that, excuse the terminology, pisses off the powers that be. Or you could go to Haiti and someone doesn't like the president, and so you end up being assassinated. Or let's bring it on home. We don't like what's going on, so we change the voting rights. We try to change the ability for people to vote. again, constitutional, or we try to rewrite history. I'm saying there's no perfect place, but if you don't care about your neighbor, then what does that say about you? Not you.
No, I get it. I get it.
You know, and again, we have relied so much on government or media to help us to navigate the landscape of what we should or shouldn't do, know or don't know. And if we are drinking from the fountains of Flint, Michigan, we will always be drinking bad water until someone changes something. And I was trying to use an analogy there.
No, I get it.
The point is, how do we broaden our horizons and consider something outside of our own little echo chamber? That's a rhetorical.
No, I mean, so I want to say this, and Hank, you ever watch that? You ever watch the movie? I think it was like Wall Street, right? With Gordon Gekko.
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay, and so Gordon Gekko, as you already know, I'm speaking to the choir there. So Gordon Gekko, he's at this stockholder meeting, and he has a speech about capitalism, and being greedy, right? It's claiming that greed is good. Okay. And I'm tying this together. So give me a moment. You had asked the question, which was, if someone is not doing those things to quote unquote participate in a safer society, right? As far as their health, getting vaccinations, wearing a mask, and so forth. I want people to also consider the idea that person is still contributing to that community. And I'm not talking about monetary or nothing like that. I'm actually just saying by them expressing their opinion, right? Now, I think
dissension is good.
Okay,
but at the end of the day, you have to do or do not.
Agreed. So
in doing, how do you decide what to do or what not to do? Another rhetorical.
And that's the beauty of quote unquote having freedom of speech, because now a person is able to decide what they deem is best for themselves.
Okay.
If the government were to place everyone under the mandate to have something vaccinated, or to have everything, whatever, right? You're now taking away the ability for someone to choose on their own.
But here's what here's a dichotomy. As COVID was running rampant, there were constant pundits saying, what is the federal government going to do? What is it doing about A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And then there are those on the other side of the echo chamber saying, well, the federal government should not be mandating and we shouldn't be doing this, that, and the other, which is correct. Both of them. Okay. But both of them. Now, if the federal government has a plan, basically a global umbrella plan that says, this is what we recommend, and here's why we recommend it, but it's not mandating that the states do something or the cities do something or the municipalities do something. There are those who say, well, the federal government should just run roughshod and mandate, which is then they're overstepping their prerogatives and their boundaries. But by the same token, we, the people, need to be protected, even sometimes from ourselves. So I don't know how we create that delicate balance.
And I guess at what point?
And to me, it's not red or blue.
No, I mean, I don't think it's red.
But sometimes people put it into one party or one pocket or the other pocket. When I have on pants, I have no pockets.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So here's the thing that comes to mind for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have people that do believe that the government has too much impact. We have others that think that the government does not have enough impact. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I will say this. Understanding that you never I mean, I don't care if it was a mandate and all that, or some of it was a mandate. I don't care if it is, hey, everyone has to get vaccinated. There is always going to be a threshold, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There will always be a threshold. I don't, some people call it survival of the fittest.
There's no absolute. I agree.
There's no absolute. Correct. Yes, absolutely. So because there is no absolute, mm-hmm. there probably isn't that much of a need for what people believe is necessary. If I know, for example, there's no absolute, but I know that the threshold is going to be 70% of Americans. If 7 out of 10 Americans mm-hmm. receive this dosage, mm-hmm. then that actually is going to cure 10 out of 10 Americans, just because of people intermixing and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but can I give a perspective?
And before you do that, I want to say this. Mm-hmm. I am not by any means a scientist, quote unquote. All right. I went to school a little bit. I did do some classes. Yeah. I do know that if you have something that, let's take humans out of it. Let's say some other mammal. I mean, you have mammals that have this disease. You have other mammals that don't have a disease, okay? And then you have a third set of mammals that at one point had the disease and received some type of, let's call it vaccination, right? Mm-hmm. That in many of these experiments, when those three groups of mammals begin to mix, mm-hmm. interact, live together, and even in some cases mate together, mm-hmm. what ends up happening is that the offspring of all three groups are now immune from that initial disease. Mm-hmm. And if someone wants to say, well, Leland, those are hamsters or rats that you're talking about, I want to say this. Things such as, I don't know, so many flus that have come out of Europe, for example, like so many plagues. Mm-hmm. Different flus had took place before my grandmother was alive. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now some type of disease took place. Mm-hmm. Now her mother, for example, may have received the shot for that. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, for example, didn't receive the shot for that. Obviously, she's still alive, and now I am here. I have never received the shot for that flu that took place in my great grandmother's life, for example.
Understand.
But now, offspring, they now have the ability to withstand whatever that flu or disease is or was. And so what I'm saying is there is obviously a healthy mix of having people who have that vaccine and people who don't have that vaccine, and that exposure who don't have that exposure, because everyone's body is so different. That's mm-hmm. the thing that really, for me, it boils down to. But go ahead, Hank. I embrace that. Here's a slant that I will put on all of that. If someone does not believe in vaccinations, but he or she is now in charge of a program of vaccinating. You see where I'm going? Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
How?
Drink the Kool-Aid, James Jones or Jim Jones. Yeah.
Well, listen, Myers-Briggs say I can talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think I can do that. But that's all. Again, it goes back. There's no absolute. So, as a nation, as a people, in my mind, how do we protect one another? How do we give one another the best opportunity for survival? That's all.
And I believe, Hank, with what you're saying, everyone should do this. They should say, hey, if you are not feeling well, parents, if your child is not feeling well, please refrain from bringing your child. Right? If you're going to a birthday party and it's being held at Sky Zone, for example, and you notice that last night or this morning that your child had the sniffles,
don't go to the community pool.
Then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you.
So I am 100% okay with that because that gives exact accountability. However, what I'm not okay with is parents. If you bring your child to the swimming pool, and hold on, and let's say as far as your child is healthy, right? But if your child has not received the vaccine, then your child cannot play with other children because that is different. But many people will argue, Leland, that's the same thing. That's the same thing, and I would say no, it's not. It's different. I understand if God forbid a child does have a snotty nose, do not bring the child to the swimming pool.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because I can remember when my children were small, the school had a policy that says, if you know your kid has a fever, do not bring him or her to school. But if they get sent home because they had a fever, they need to, it needs to be, I think it was 48 hours after the fever broke that you could bring them back to school because they were, still contagious. So I'm saying that we already have norms. And
all I'm saying is let's keep the norms.
Yeah, that's all. Let's continue to practice norms. It's sort of like safe sex. I don't know what that means if people are reckless.
Right. Exactly. Good point.
No, I'm just saying. I don't
know. I mean, no. It's a perfect point because
if in New York City there are people who want a vaccine, but they don't know, they don't have internet capabilities, they don't have smart devices. Okay. How do municipalities know that Hank Hunt wants a vaccine? How do we ensure that those who want to participate in this experiment, and I'm not talking about medical experiment, this experiment of democracy, how do we make certain that they have a fair shot at it? That's all. Whether it's vaccines, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, whatever. How do we do that?
Yeah.
I think that's the sum total of the argument that I've been having today is because I don't know what fair is. I don't even talk about what's fair. It's the idea that people have an opportunity to do or not do, go or not go, say or not say, and then we should make certain that people understand what is considered appropriate behavior. Anyway,
I want to. So, with that being said, we're going to end this segment, and we'll pop on in a little bit. We want to go ahead and end this segment. If you guys have any takes or ideas or things that you would like to share in reference to this was in reference to the New York Times article. Speaking of the Delta spreads and how somehow or another a virus that supposedly a variant that originated in the Delta has now originated or is now in New York. So
it's called free travel.
Free travel. There you go.
That's it.
So
that's it.
If it's in New York, it's probably in Toronto. If it's in Toronto, it's probably in Quebec. If it's in Quebec, it's probably in England.
Yeah, smart people say it's everywhere. No, I'm saying, the scientists are saying it's probably everywhere.
Yeah, it's probably everywhere. It's in Bangladesh right now. So
that's why I mask, I glove, I sanitize.
Yes, sir. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.